Hi everybody and welcome to Subnetting Made Easy. And today I'm going to show you the magic number theory of how we're going to do this. But let's set up our scenario. So in our scenario, we bought a startup company and we need to bring them on board, and the office has about 20 hosts, and your boss has assigned you to create a network to support them without being wasteful. Also, you need to document the following for future expansion. What is the new subnet mask and CIDR? What is the usable IP address range that we can assign to these hosts? And how many networks will we have for future expansion? So I'm going to transition over to our Excel sheet that I created to give us a visual representation, a little bit of what we're going to do, and explain a little bit further. Okay, so here's our little chart that we're going to be working from, and it's going to help us with some of the questions that we're being asked. There's one question I'm going to put in here that we haven't asked, and what is going to be our network increment value? And what does this mean? So this is going to be where we start building networks from. This is the interval that we use to create more networks. Okay. Now remember one thing, we can't go past 256. After 256, there's nothing we can do anymore. So that is it. Okay. So we have some bit values, and what are these bit values? Well, first of all, if you remember our lecture, we talked about the network address and the host bits. Okay, so, and that is defined by the subnet mask. So our subnet mask for our 192.168.1.0 is going to be a /24. That's what we're given. So in a /24, the bit value is 256. Okay, and as you can see, we have it written out up here where it is the first three octets, 250, are full, or all the bits are turned on, and that is 255.255.255.0. This is the standard subnet mask for a Class C address, IP address. So, again, we need to, now going back to our question, we need to create a network that supports 20 hosts without being wasteful. What is wasteful? Anything that's an excessive amount. Okay, so some people may say that 255 addresses are not being wasteful, but if you only need 20 hosts, it is kind of wasteful. So we want to trim it down as much as possible so that we don't have that excessive amount of waste. Okay, so let's go ahead and start calculating it out. All right. Why do I have 256 here? 256 is our starting point where we're at right now. And that's a CIDR of /24. And we're going to also calculate the CIDR as we go on. Okay, so let's do some basic math. First of all, we already know that that 256 is going to be extremely wasteful, so we're not even going to start there. So this bit, because we have a /24, is already turned on. Okay, that is automatically turned on. So now what we want to do is do some simple math calculation here. We take 128, okay, and we're going to minus 20. Okay, this leaves us, I don't have to sum it, with a 108. Okay, that's pretty extreme there. So obviously we're going to turn this on, okay, because we can use it. But we can do better. Now, since we can do better, we're going to move on, but let's add this 1 to 24 and see what our CIDR notation is going to be. Our CIDR notation now is going to change because we're adding one host bit to our subnet mask, and that is going to be a /25. Okay, so now let's go on. So does 64, let's clear this out. Does 64, can we take 20 from 64? Yes, we can. It's perfectly fine. We get 44. It's a little bit better than 108, but we can do better. So we're going to turn this bit on. And now we're going to add 1 to 25, since the bit is turned on, and this is going to leave us with a CIDR of a /26. Okay? Why did it change? Because for every bit we turn on, the CIDR is going to also increment. So we went from a /24 when we turned on 128, it changed it to a /25. When we turned on bit 64, it changed the CIDR notation to a /26. Okay, so can we do better from this chart? Yes, we can. So we can actually go ahead. Let's clear this out and clear this out. And let's put 32. Can we subtract 20 from 32? Yes, this gives us a 12. And this is perfect because we turn this on and we increment our CIDR notation again, and we have a /27. All right, so now here we go. Can we take 20 from 16? No, we cannot. So therefore, what will happen is we stop at this point. All the remaining bits will stay off. So what am I doing? I'm keeping these bits off by placing a 0 to indicate that these bits are off. All this is off. All these bits we turned on. So now we have a CIDR notation. Alrighty. So now we need to figure out what our new subnet mask is going to be that supports host. Okay. So our new subnet mask is going to be easy because we already have this. We don't need to add this together. We need to start here and go forward. So we go 128, 64, let's do it in order, and 32. When we add these together and we'll auto sum it, it gives us 224. So our new subnet mask is going to change. So now we are going to have a subnet mask of 255.255.255.224 because we turn this bit on. Okay. So now we have an easy question here. What is our CIDR notation? Well, by adding the ones from this starting point on, we have a /27. Perfect. Okay, great. So now we've answered this question. So we're good with this. This is already done. So now we have a question. What's our usable range and how many networks can we have for future expansion? Well, here's the good news. We already can solve this. Our first network address is going to be our starting point always. 192.168.1.0. That is our starting point. And this is going to be our first network. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to do something that is going to may confuse you, but understand I'm gonna do my best to try to clear this up very carefully. So, how do we determine the rest of this information? We only have the network address, a new subnet mask. So this is where question 1 what is our network increment value? Well, it's easy. Where does the 1 stop? Where did we stop? We stopped at 32. So our increment value is going to be 32. And every network every new network address is going to be added by 32. And I'll explain. So our next network address is going to be 192.168. Oh, yes, and you're going to ask me how I'm going to determine the broadcast address? Well, stay tuned for 2 seconds while we finish this up, and I'm going to show you the easiest way to determine the network address, the broadcast address. Okay, so now we have 32, right? That's our next network. Network number 2, right? Easy. Remember, there's a formula that we talked about in our lecture, which is 2 to the n minus 2, which technically translates into you're always going to lose 2 IP addresses, one for the network address and one for the broadcast. We were already given our first network address, so now we only need to find the broadcast, so we need to lose 1. So how do we do that? Well, we look at our next network, which is incremented by 32, and minus 1 from 32 is 31. Okay, so now we have our broadcast address. So how do we determine our usable range? Our usable range is everything between the network address and the broadcast address. I'm going to write it out for this first one, but as we progress further, I'm going to show you, I'm going to truncate it a little bit or shorten it. So our first usable that we can assign to any device is going to be 1.1. Okay, 192.168.1.1. And that is going to go all the way to 192.168.1.30. Okay, this is our usable. Okay, now we have our network, our usable. Okay, so now we have our usable range. So here I'm going to write 1 through 30 is going to be our usable range for this first network that we're doing. Okay, so how many networks can we create? Okay, very simply put, we can we just increment by 32. So all we're going to do is add 32 to the rest of this. This is our next network. And then we keep going. All by 32. Okay. And then this is going to be where we stop because we cannot go any further. And this is where I'm going to put this in red here because we cannot go any further. This is a stopping point. This is only a placeholder for me. And so let's number our networks down. So we don't count this network. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we have 8. 8 networks. So we have 8 networks for future expansion. Well, we have 7 for future expansion. In total, we have 8. And that's how we're going to do that there. So how do we fill in the rest of this chart? Very simply put, we just need to remember we have these network address, and this is just really a placeholder for the broadcast address for network 8. So I work backwards. So it's very easy, and all we're doing is taking the next network address, 254, so this is going to be 192.168.1.223. The next one is 192.168.1.191. And then we're going to go ahead, and the next one is going to be 192.168. And it is going to be 1.159. The next one is going to be 192.168.1.127. The next one here is going to be 192.168.1. And it's going to be 95. And then finally, this is going to be 192.168.1.63. Okay, perfect. So now that we have these in, we can find out the usable ranges, and that's very easy. This is going to be from 33 to 62. The next one is going to be, going down here, is going to be 65 to 94. The next one's going to be 97 to 126. The next network is going to be, the usable range is going to be 129 through 158. And then we're going to have 161 through 190. And then we have 193 through 222. Okay. And finally, we come up to our last network, and our last usable range is going to be 225 through 254. Okay. So I'm just going to fill this in so that you have an idea as we go through it. So, recapping, we increment our networks until we get all the way to an endpoint. Okay, once we get to that endpoint, that's it. We stop. Okay, this is our stopping point. We increment each network by 32 because this is the last bit we turned on. So therefore, that's our increment value for every network address in this office if we were to so use it. Okay, so that being said, now that we have the network address, we could find out the broadcast address by subtracting one IP address from the previous network. So for the .0 network, I looked at the next network, which is 32. We minus 1, that's 31. We look at the next network, that's 64. The broadcast for the 32 is going to be 63. And then we keep doing this. 96 would be 95 for the previous network's broadcast address. And 127 is going to be for this address here for this network. And then we have 159 for this network, and so on and so forth. Okay? And we'll go ahead and color these in. them all the same. There we go. Okay. So as you can see now, we have our usable ranges for all the networks. We have 8 networks. Obviously, we're not going to use all of them. We just need to know the one for this one. And do we have 20 hosts available? Yeah, well, we have a little bit more. We have, literally, we have 12 extra IP addresses if we so need it. Okay, so I want to thank you for watching. You have a and this is how our answer should look like. So as you can see here, we have our network address, our usable range, and our broadcast address for all the networks. And we've answered all our questions, all by using the magic number. And thank you for watching. Please remember to click the subscribe button so that you can be notified when new videos are released. And special thanks goes out to the people who made the slide that I'm using right now. Thank you very much, Slide Carnival. And if any photographs are used on Splash, so I want to thank you and reach out to you. So thank you for these free resources. I like it. Bye-bye.